Welcome to Deadly Ever After, a podcast where the fairy tale leads to a nightmare. As veteran luxury event planners, we explore the sometimes dangerous path to I do.
Join us weekly as we share true stories of deadly proposals, homicidal honeymoons, and everything in between.
Our hope is to share helpful insights into wedding planning, avoidable red flags, and, of course, to honor the victims involved. I'm Regina.
And I'm Tasha.
And you're listening to Deadly Ever After. All right, and we're back.
Hello.
Hi. Been a little while. Been a hot minute, right? Since we've recorded this one. We're actually re-recording, so this is all sarcasm. So yes, we have recorded this case once, but we felt like we didn't do it justice, so we're re-recording it, so you get to hear the better version. So you're welcome. And it's a long one, so we're just gonna dive right in. But it's a really, really sad case because it remains unsolved. Like, we basically know who done it. We just, she hasn't seen any justice, unfortunately. So the perpetrator is actually now on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. So did you actually know anything about how this works?
Not all of the specifics,
Okay.
but some.
Okay. Yeah, I knew nothing. And so I went and looked it up because I'm like, okay, does this make a difference? Like, being on the FBI's most wanted fugitive list, like, what does that mean? The list itself was created in 1950, and it actually has like a really high success rate. Like, more than 90% of the individuals placed in this list are apprehended or located, meaning like they find their dead body, basically. So what data, though, did you find?
As of recent data, over 520 individuals have been on the list. More than 490 of these have been captured or located.
Awesome.
Approximately 1/3 of these captures were a direct result of public assistance and tips, which means this is all of us, all of you. Everybody needs to help. Keeping the victims' stories going and told more times will keep it in front of people and potentially, spreading awareness of like, hey, check out who this person is. And if you know any information, share it, because it could lead to help of capturing them in some way, or form. Way or form.
Right. This is why we're recording multiple times this episode. Having some tongue twisters here today. So, but you know what? Let's dive in. So Estrella Carrera was born February 5th, 1986 to her parents Antonio and Antonia, which, I mean, like, what are the odds that you marry someone with like almost your same exact name? While not much is really known about her early life publicly, we did know that Estrella grew up in Chicago and eventually settled into Burbank. And so that's where she lived, in Chicago. She ultimately had 2 children. So we do know that Estrella had a daughter, one of those 2 children, from a prior relationship, who was 8 years old as of May of 2012. So although some publications report her as 9, like, it's unclear, but basically, like, she has a young elementary school daughter. In interviews with like various publications, Estrella has been described by her family and friends as like really outgoing and independent, someone like just insisted on charting her own path, really friendly, really smart, capable. This is a person I want to hang out with. I mean, she's very involved in her children's lives. She dedicates a lot of time to them. She works really hard that her, kids get good grades. So for a living, she was working as a Spanish language translator for a social welfare agency. So, like, again, you're not just doing good at home, you're doing good in the world. That, she's putting it out there. So that's amazing. But, what did her family really say about who she was?
Sandy Lopez, one of Estrella's cousins, described her to the Chicago Tribune that she was a beautiful mother, person, and sister. Her uncle, Pedro, said to CBS News she was real friendly to everyone.
Yeah. So, again, Estrella was just someone I think everyone would be really happy to have in their life. So she did move into an apartment along the 7800 block of South Rutherford Avenue in the early months of 2012. She didn't really get to know a lot of her neighbors, but one of them did know her a little bit because she accidentally had locked herself out, and that's how they became acquainted. And he always had like really nice things to say about her, just saying she was a really quiet neighbor. So we we get
That's
that.
kind of neighbors to have.
Exactly. So to introduce you to the other half of this equation, this is Arnaldo Rangel Jimenez, who was born on February 19th, 1982 in Texas. He grew up, though, in the southwest side of Chicago, and he settled with his family eventually in the Brighton Park area. At the time of the wedding to Estrella in 2012, he was living in the 4200 block of South Mozart in Chicago. The two reportedly had met at a nightclub through mutual friends, and they basically dated like on and off for a while. She ended up having a son with Arnaldo. So even though this, was a tumultuous relationship, obviously all the red flags that we talk about all the time were there. They were on again, off again. She did end up having a son with him. And on Friday, May 11th, 2012, she was 26 at the time. She called all of her family and friends and announced, I'm getting married. So she and her long-term partner, this Arnaldo guy, had been planning this since like early May 2nd-ish is when they actually applied for their marriage license. So that's kind of, they're speculating that that's when
just slightly over a week.
Not long. So again, this is like an elopement situation here, right? So they didn't tell anyone. It was super last minute. Now this obviously brought everyone by surprise. Anyone calling you saying I'm getting married last minute would be strong. But more importantly, they actually thought they weren't even dating anymore. So they didn't even know they were back together through this 3-year-long relationship. They were on the break side of things. So not only is she getting married, it's to the dude that everyone thought they weren't dating anymore. So Sandy, that cousin you were mentioning, she had talked to reporters again and said we got invited last minute. What specifically did she say?
She said she didn't want to tell me she had gotten married. She didn't tell anybody besides her father the day before. Jamie or Jaime,
it's hard to know,
another
right?
one of her of Estrella's cousins, said in the same Chicago Tribune article, this just happened out of nowhere. It was so fast, I couldn't even make it to the celebration.
Ugh. Yikes. Okay, so, and Yasmin, who is Estrella's sister, said that she had been invited via text. I mean...
That's a little bit informal, but...
right? Okay. Super last minute, and was not able to attend the celebration after the wedding, which then took place. They did, the city hall thing, and then they went to a restaurant for, family dinner or whatever, and then they were going to go clubbing. Yeah,
and it's strange that people didn't even know that they were on again, and now they're married.
Right.
Or getting married.
Yeah, it's not even that they're oh, yeah, you guys have been together for 100 years. Makes total sense that you guys are just gonna walk down the aisle and call it a deal. No, they didn't even think you guys were dating. So this small ceremony they did do it at Chicago City Hall. So, again, small, intimate. You've done elopements more than I have. So tell me about that.
Yes. So before wedding planning, when I worked at a wedding venue, we did a lot more because it'd be people would call and be like, hey, I'd like to get married. Great. When are you looking for? Oh, 2-3 o'clock.
Now.
That day. Okay. It wasn't a courthouse that I worked at, but it was people wanted it to be like that.
Yeah.
Now in planning world, we've had some fast ones, especially when COVID was around. There was a lot more people being I just want it small, little elopement. So that was happening more often, but honestly, don't have a ton of elopements, more so just quick engagements.
Right. And as planners, we can throw things together really quickly. Yeah. It's not hard as long as you just let us, you put your head down, give us your credit card, and we'll go.
And make decisions in a timely fashion.
Right. Or leave it to your planner to make all the decisions. Yeah, we can rock it for you. But, for most people, a week, not enough time. And certainly, they weren't planning a large celebration. It seemed fairly informal. So Estrella and Arnaldo did have that dinner, right, at a restaurant nearby. And then their plan was just, to hit up some nightclubs. So Estrella sent now these two kids, right, because she's got the daughter from the previous relationship and the son that she has with Arnaldo, to her with their grandfather, so her dad, in the Marquette Park neighborhood of Chicago. So the two of them could go party and do their thing. Love that for them.
Yeah.
The newlyweds and their friends drove around in a party limousine, also a big fan of party limousines, and went out to a nightclub that was located on Chicago's north side. There they celebrated and hung out with their loved ones till approximately 4 a.m. Ooh.
That's
Nuh-uh.
late.
No.
That is a long night.
No, yep. Yeah. I'm too tired for that. I am too old for that. But I will tell you, just as I always say to any of my friends when we just even go out and do anything, nothing good happens after midnight.
No.
Nothing. Just get your butt back home and safe in bed, because nothing good happens after midnight. It's in every fairy tale we grew up with, and that is just the reality of the world.
Yeah. Cinderella. Strict.
100%. Yeah. Nothing good. Shit goes wrong after midnight. So on May 12th, 4 a.m., everybody's, okay, like, peace, we're going to go home. And Estrella's that cousin, Sandy, is like, everybody seemed fine. Like, you know, everybody had a good time. Nothing was out of the ordinary. So there was nothing that would made them, like, extra sus about the whole situation. So later now, again, it's the morning. It's, you know, we're the whole next day now. Saturday, May 12th. Estrella's supposed to go pick up those kids.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure Grandpa wants to maybe give them back at this point.
100%. And so she doesn't show up. And the members of the family are like, oh no, like what happened here? So they're attempting to, like, get a hold of her. They can't find her. Some family members actually headed to her home in Burbank, and they're, like, knocking on the door, but nobody came. And they didn't expect her there because her car wasn't there. Okay. So, I'm guessing they assume that she's with him.
Maybe she's out or...
Right. They're out together. Right.
They were busy, obviously, getting married and maybe had some
doing
stuff
the
to
things.
do.
Right. Maybe they're brunch, you know, because that's what I would have enjoyed.
Yeah,
instead of
brunch.
that. Yeah, you need it at 4 a.m. Like, yeah, you definitely need a hangover brunch. So the police were called on Sunday, May 13th. Now, coincidentally, this is also Mother's Day. So 2 days now after the wedding, it's 36 hours since anyone has seen Estrella alive or spoken to any of her family or friends. Like, it's very clear that something has happened to her, because she would not leave her kids and not reach out to them specifically on Mother's Day. So officers for the Burbank Police Department arrive at Estrella's apartment shortly after 3:30 that afternoon, and were greeted by members of Estrella's family who'd been looking for her out the entire day. And so they enter her condo, which is on the 3rd floor. Ooh, that's an interesting clue. We'll have to come back to that. Of this building, and surprise, I find just everything's super normal. Nothing is really out of place. And there's like no indication, right? Like, we know from enough true crime podcasts, where's the signs of forced entry?
Yep.
Are things missing?
Yeah, is anything burglarized or broken?
Shit thrown around?
Yeah.
You know, like, you're looking for evidence that something has happened there.
A struggle of some sort.
Anything. However, they do shortly walk into her bathroom a little after 4, and it's sadly there where they discover her body in the bathtub. And she is still wearing the silver sequin cocktail dress that she had worn as like her wedding night celebration dress. So completely devastating. So her family obviously shaken and really upset by what happened. What did they say when they were interviewed by the Chicago Tribune?
Estrella's cousin, Jamie or Jaime, depending how it's pronounced, stated, "We never thought this would happen. She was a strong woman. She loved her kids. Reality still hasn't hit me." Another cousin, Sandy, which we talked about earlier, said to the reporters with CBS News, "She was a lovely human being, caring, more like a sister to me than a cousin. No idea why somebody would do this to her."
Oof. Estrella had a funeral just a few days later, which was attended by hundreds of people. Family, friends, you know, anyone that she came in contact with. And the event itself was closed off to the public for good reason. The family wanted those that had really, really known Estrella to attend the event and just get one last chance to celebrate with her before they lay her to rest. They did that later that day, and Mary is buried in St. Mary Catholic Cemetery in a mausoleum. Investigators of the crime are unable still to find any sort of evidence of anything being noticeably out of place. There's no broken glass, like we mentioned, no proof that anything's missing, no indication of a robbery or anything that even just shows like motive, like what happened here. An autopsy of Estrella was conducted the day that after she was found. So that would be Monday, May 14th, 2012. That autopsy confirmed that investigators had theorized after observing the crime scene that Estrella had been stabbed to death. Yeah, but determined that she had been stabbed total 18 times.
That's excessive.
It's 100% excessive. And we know
that when something's done of that nature, it's passion, it's somebody you know.
100%. I mean, we have enough podcasts and true crime knowledge that we know this is clearly pointing to someone who had a lot of anger issues towards this person, which would be someone that she knew then. Whoever did this obviously wanted her dead. It's not an accident by any stretch of the imagination. The crime scene itself, meaning that bathroom in her apartment, again, they're not finding any evidence of a crime. They're also just not finding any like blood splatter. Like it clearly did not happen there.
Right. Yeah, 18 times would have left
It's
a lot of residue.
Yeah, that's a lot. So they assumed that she was murdered elsewhere and then dragged or carried to the apartment and then laid down in the tub. Found more than obviously a day and a half later. She's still wearing that dress. So they assume that she also was then murdered directly after leaving the nightclub.
Right.
In that particular outfit. So this is an interesting point that I don't know in how many times we've kind of gone over this case. She lived on the 3rd floor. Who's carrying her up 3 flights of stairs?
Yeah, but you're also not... Like, you can't be dragging a body up 3 flights of stairs with nobody sees or hears you. So you are being carried. Now, there could be somebody helping carry.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Because, I mean, that's going to be the quietest. Unless, I mean, how small is she and how big is whoever might have done this? Right.
Yeah, all factors to kind of take into consideration because that would have been no easy feat. It was notable to many that the person she had been last seen with was, of course, her new husband. This is Arnoldo Jimenez. He's nowhere around either. So when the family members and friends of the two newlyweds and the investigators, they're they discover her. They knew they were out at the nightclub though the night before. They did discover that a conversation had become really heated between the two of them from surveillance footage that was recovered right outside the nightclub. So they go outside, they're arguing, it's recorded by the surveillance video. Nothing got violent in that video, but it happened just a few hours, obviously, before they must have returned back to the apartment and this crime was committed. But the body language, obviously, between them, you could tell somebody was upset with somebody. Okay. It ends with the two newlyweds crossing the street, getting into Arnoldo's black Maserati, flipping a U-ey and heading back in the direction of Estrella's condo. So he technically is probably the last person to see her alive.
Right. Now, has anybody seen or heard from her husband?
No. So at this point, they believe that no one has heard from him.
So he might also be injured?
You might, maybe, right? Like, it could be a potential that he's also a victim. Right now he's landing more in the category of suspect.
Right.
Because, we always assume...
Well, we can't find him and
he's
not around.
Right. And the last time they're seen together, they're arguing about something. That we know. So they immediately focus on him. And they, more importantly, can't find that black Maserati, which, I'm sorry.
It's a very
it's a
distinctive car.
Yeah, that's a showy car.
You're not seeing that drive by you multiple times in different colors in the same night.
Right.
It's going to be like there's like a 1 in a million random times you're going to see that.
Absolutely. And so and that's nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
So again, big question marks, right? Family members of Estrella also mention that the day that Estrella's body is found, Arnoldo had actually called his sister, and she is actually the person that had ended up calling the police, asking them to perform a wellness check on Estrella. So it wasn't her family that called the cops. His sister did. Now, what did she have to say?
Arnaldo had told his sister, as recounted by Yasmin to the Associated Press. She said that he was crying and he was really nervous. He said that they had a really bad fight and he had left her bleeding.
Mm.
Arnaldo had reportedly hung up on his sister during the phone call and refused to answer when she called back, resulting in her reaching out to police to do a check-in on her new sister-in-law.
Ugh.
To me, that just kind of says, like, I know my brother's personality, and you know, this makes me really nervous.
Right, 100%. And investigators are trying to learn more now about this, this relationship, and they learned that the couple's tumultuous 3-year relationship had a violence in the past. And while none of these incidents were actually formally reported to the police, it was learned that Estrella had at one point pursued a protective order against Arnaldo, but it was likely abandoned at some point prior to her obtaining the marriage license. We don't go from like a restraining order or protective order to marriage license.
Marriages don't fix things.
Yeah.
Not that deep.
Not that period. Not that. No. So Yasmin, the sister, okay, later had told reporters that Arnaldo had hit Estrella in the past, leaving visible bruises that she couldn't explain. And she also described Arnaldo as very possessive and jealous, a sentiment that was shared by many members of the Estrella family. So it seems like Estrella's family really disapproved overall of their relationship and didn't particularly like him. Now, this might have been why they did this like elopement thing, right?
Yeah.
She didn't want to hear from her parents.
Yeah, she probably just didn't want to be told, like, this is a bad idea.
Yeah, he's a jerk. Right. You could do better. All the things, right? And I have been in a relationship where I know my family bit their tongue for many, many years. And I know you have too. So we've all been there and done that, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, thankfully ours didn't end up like this.
Yes.
But yeah, I just feel like, when your friends and family tell you to like re-examine something,
maybe don't ignore it.
Just listen to it. Yeah, just listen to it. So it seems like for whatever reason, Estrella still decided to go through with this wedding. Perhaps she, again, hoped that the marriage would fix things, or I don't know, maybe it would bring them closer together. Who knows? But
maybe she just didn't want to break up her family because, he
right,
was a father of one of their kids.
100%.
So, not saying that a marriage is going to fix your family
Definitely
either.
won't. Nope.
But
it
could have been something she was thinking.
Yeah, I think people look at marriage sometimes as being a Band-Aid for things. It's, in fact, quite the opposite.
Yeah.
It just puts a magnifying glass on anything that's wrong.
Correct.
And so it's unfortunate for her that she felt this way and went through with it. But for the first several hours after the ceremony itself, things were going well. Like, family and friends, everyone partying with them said like, oh no, they all seemed great. Like no one was arguing, nothing, right? So they didn't have any concerns at that particular moment. But within just days of this discovery of her body, the Burbank police actually reached out to the FBI and obtained their assistance in looking for Arnaldo because he has ties all over. He's definitely a huge flight risk. And this, knowing that he's the only suspect in the case, knowing that he had such a huge head start, and he does have family in the area, so it is his connection, but you have to take precautions and prevent him from leaving the country.
Right.
Canada, Mexico, all of those things. The captain, Joseph Ford, had told reporters, we do not believe Jimenez is a danger to others, but we certainly do not know his mind frame, right? He could be really upset and trying to avoid capture and could lash out. So you have to be really, really careful. When police began attempting to learn more about him, they also discovered more about his checkered criminal history. It pointed to a lot of disturbing traits. Number one, he had actually been charged with domestic battery by another girlfriend years before meeting Estrella. Now, the complaining witness didn't show up for court, so of course, charges are dropped. Again, this is like, you got to show up for these things, people, because this potentially could have been, like if she had followed through with this, maybe this wouldn't have happened to Estrella, right? The following year, 2004, he'd been convicted of deceptive practice, like a fraud or something. But it was a misdemeanor, so like not a big deal as far as criminal history goes. In 2007, he had been arrested on multiple drug charges alongside his brother Umberto. So now he comes into the picture. Okay. It's not widely circulated at the time of the murder, likely due to ongoing investigations that were happening even before Estrella's murder. So they're like behind the scenes, like these are bad dudes.
Yep.
And like the government's already onto them.
Okay.
Yeah. So drug charges, all of that, there's day-to-day activities that they believe that the Estrella family's saying, okay, we know he's up to no good. Like they've always had their doubts as to like quote unquote working in construction.
Okay.
And that I saw on an episode of In Pursuit with John Walsh. Have you ever seen that show?
I don't think I have.
Yeah. It's not, I didn't watch, I mean, obviously I'm very familiar with John Walsh and,
yes,
his son's case and everything and how he got involved with all of this. But, yeah, I definitely think it's a put on your list show. If
must watch.
Yeah. If you're interested in following, crime stories. But they claim that he did work in the drug trade to some capacity. And it's really like they kind of point to like his really nice car.
Yeah. I was going to say, how do you
afford that?
Those? Yeah.
Yeah. So he did presumably disappear along with this black Maserati. And this would have given him a lot of time, like a full over 24-hour head start on getting out before the cops are called and find Estrella's body. So Arnaldo had also owned a piece of property in Texas. So they figured dude's heading to his home in Texas, right? And it just so happened to be right on the Mexican border near the Rio Grande. So, he's got family in multiple states. He has property himself near Mexico. This is why they call the FBI. Like, head start, bad dude, too many options.
You need more people.
So a first-degree murder warrant is issued for the arrest of Arnaldo Jimenez, and that's May 15th. So on May 17th, the FBI issued an unlawful flight warrant, allowing them even more discretion in their hunt for the fugitive. Because of his prior ties to the state of Texas, it was believed that he might have fled there first and likely was planning to like keep going over Mexico border, right? So when the police got his cell phone records, they discovered that the cell phone had been traveling southbound from Chicago quickly after Estrella's death.
Awesome.
Yeah. So he went from Chicago to South Illinois. Then he's like in Memphis. Then he's in Arkansas. And then the following day, May 13th, this is when Estrella's body is found. It's on May 13th. His cell phone pinged in Houston, Texas. And then again later that evening, really in Hidalgo, which is a town right close to the Mexican border. So
he's making distance.
Yeah, we see the direction he's going. Using this information, police have started talking to Arnaldo's friends and family, and one of them even confessed to speaking to Arnaldo before he left Chicago. According to this friend, he said, if anyone asks any questions about me, say that I had gone to Mexico.
Well, wouldn't you say like a black Maserati is really easy to spot and like people would be
right?
Like, yeah. People would be calling this in being like, hey, you're looking for this car. I've seen it. And
yeah, it's like driving around with a big spotlight on yourself. So despite disappearing in that original Maserati, investigators believe that he actually didn't flee the whole area in that's not what he's actually traveling in.
Sense.
Yeah, it's too recognizable. People would have popped up somewhere on the highway, traffic cams, who knows, right? Like, but they think he dumped it. So while they're still actively in search for the Maserati, they don't believe he's actually using it at that point. Yeah. So with all of this and what seems just like a lot of dead ends, the case ends up disappearing really quickly from the press. And investigators are surmising that Arnaldo has successfully really fled the country. And it's not until later the story would resurface again a few months later when they discover a little missing puzzle piece from another ongoing investigation. So it's October now of 2012, nearly 5 months later.
Okay.
In a drug raid, they find the Maserati. This vehicle had been found in the garage of Umberto, who Brighton Park home was raided by the DEA, not Deadly Ever After, Drug Enforcement Agency. We did not do that.
That was not
That
on
it was not
purpose.
us. That was the Drug Enforcement Agency. Umberto stood accused of helping run this distribution network, which was moving kilos of cocaine throughout multiple stash houses throughout Chicago. The DEA, not us, but the Drug Enforcement Agency, had been surveilling them for months, even before Estrella's murder. And
But, like, if they're surveillancing him, how did they not see this Maserati get there? Like,
I don't know.
Or was it just like hey, somebody's coming, you know, in a black vehicle? Or, like, you know, how was that missed?
Well, you know, as we know from phone calls that they had recorded, I don't know how much surveillance was audio and how much was visual.
Okay.
So, you know, they know that there were even incriminating statements made on a few occasions that are recorded. So we know that there was audio recordings happening during the ongoing investigation of Umberto. He actually had multiple cell phones, like 6.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. I can barely keep track of my one.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, it's bad. The court documents filed with Umberto saying he was helping, you know, Arnaldo run this ring. And then the day that Estrella Carrera's body was found, Umberto had told someone on the phone, quote, "There's been an emergency," and then later referred to, quote, "a huge problem," end quote, that had to be taken care of.
Our brother's just a real pain at the
They
end.
always mess up your plans when you're trying to take over the drug world, you know? So, at the time, Umberto's cell phone had also been traveling from Chicago to Tennessee to Arkansas and then to Texas. So it's not just a coincidence that his cell phone's pinged all over the same places. They believe that that Umberto dropped Arnaldo off at the Mexican border.
Oh.
So we have a car, but we don't have a suspect.
So did they, like, find anything in the car? Or what was the shape of the car?
Yeah. So the vehicle, which was quickly found and identified as Arnaldo's, I mean, obviously, because how many black Maseratis are in that hood, was analyzed. And inside, investigators found numerous bloodstains, which someone had tried to evidently clean up afterwards, but, you know, that never really works. So because of this amount of blood, it was quickly theorized that there was a conflict, like there was a fight, right? And him and Estrella and Arnaldo got in a fight in the car.
Okay.
And whatever got heated, it was then obviously escalated to the point where this happened. So it believed that at that point, the crime was committed in the car, and then she was drugged or carried up to her Burbank apartment where the body was found. So again, the FBI is also trying to create theories. What did the FBI think at this point?
As described by FBI Special Agent Steve Barnard of the Chicago Field Office, we believe she was stabbed in the vehicle and then dragged back into the apartment and left bleeding in a bathtub.
Yeah, so the FBI is on the same page with the local police department. The police were refusing to say whether or not there was a murder weapon actually recovered in the car, but they have been known to say, quote, "There's a plethora of evidence," end quote, inside the vehicle, and that hiding of his Maserati in his brother's garage indicated that he'd received some assistance from his members of the family to get the hell out of Dodge. So that's where we're at. There's no updates to this case. The Arnaldo Mendez, he's still out there. He's still running from his warrants from this investigation. And it's really up to everyone in the public and law enforcement to bring justice for Estrella and her family. Arnaldo Jimenez, who would have turned 42 years old this year, would stand around 6 feet tall and approximately weigh 220 pounds, as he did at the time of the appearance. He has black hair, brown eyes. His appearance has probably changed over the years, not just because he's a decade older than when this happened, but he's also likely tried to change certain aspects of his appearance to remain unidentified. Now, on May 8th of 2019, nearly 7 years after Estrella's murder, Arnaldo was then added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitive list, and he is now the 500 and second
22nd.
I can say it, 522nd fugitive to be placed on the list, and he remains there to this day. Arnaldo is believed to be hiding in the Mexican state of Durango, and which investigators stated publicly. They're theorizing that more than a decade ago, because of all the drug trade connections from his brother. So it's likely that he's working with or helping to operate in central Mexico with cartels. For that reason alone, he is considered armed and dangerous, but he also has shown that he's obviously a violent killer who likely knows that anyone who learns his identity can take away his freedom with a single phone call. So for that reason, if anyone does think they know details about this case or any of this sounds familiar, or you see this gentleman or someone who looks like him or mentions him, you really do want to proceed with immense caution. We are going to post numbers to the Chicago field office and to the FBI so that if anyone does have any tips on this case, that you can supply them anonymously and you can help bring some justice to the family. So we know that justice and finding Arnaldo Jimenez, it won't bring Estrella back, but it definitely will provide some closure to the family. So following the announcement that her sister's killer had been added to the FBI's most wanted list, Yasmin told reporters with ABC she hopes to keep her memory alive for as long as possible. What exactly did she say to the reporter?
She was a loving daughter, sister, friend, and above all, a great mother. Her children need justice for their mommy. They shouldn't be spending Mother's Day at a mass dedicated to her and sending flowers to the cemetery. We know nothing will bring Estrella back, but at least we could have some kind of peace knowing Arnaldo is paying for his crime.
So for the reasons we've talked about, it's very possible that federal agents have a lot more evidence. The police department has a lot more evidence that will help to bring him to justice and be found guilty once he's given a fair trial. We're also hoping that there's a $100,000 reward to catch him, that this also helps to provide a little bit of fire and motivation to those who do know something to come forward. But at this time, the story of Estrella Carrera remains unsolved. So it's a sad one.
It's very sad.
It's a sad one. Go ahead and head over to our Instagram where we're going to show you pictures of Estrella and also pictures of Arnaldo. So you can be on the lookout as well. And that's going to be the end of this case for now. Yeah. Hopefully we get to revisit it with happier news.
Yes. Hopefully updates someday.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, guys. Take care. We'll see you next week.
Thanks.